Let's take a closer look at the state of the overall economy. We have current affairs commentator Einar Tangen in Beijing, and we're also joined by Perry Wong, the Managing Director of Research at the Milken Institute in Los Angeles. Gentlemen, welcome. You heard those numbers there. I'm sure you've seen them as well. Einar Tangen, first of all, in Beijing, the naysayers are already saying that the Chinese government is allowing more money into the property market when it's supposed to be cooling it down. What do you think about that?
Well, obviously, the facts speak for themselves, but I think the real indices that you should be looking at are jobs, disposable income, as you mentioned, and also profitability. The amount of exports and imports have both gone up, but the profitability of Chinese firms has dramatically increased over year on year. I think this is a real sign that China is climbing the value chain, and this is one of the indices that people should be looking at in terms of whether you should be investing in China or in more established markets, Europe and the United States.
Are you saying some of those companies are becoming, as the government would say, leaner and meaner, and that's why their profitability has increased?
Yes, there's that. There's also currency issues that are involved. A stronger dollar has been very helpful. But overall, China has, for a long period of time, suffered from very low margins, especially in its industries. Part of it is that a number of those industries are moving offshore due to competitive demands, cheaper labor, etc. But those remaining are still managing to eke out a better bottom line. And this, of course, leads to add-on effects in terms of disposable income and jobs.
Perry Wong, we just heard that we have cheaper labor moving out of China, some of it coming even to the United States. You have some money leaving China as well. We get these figures every quarter about the fundamentals of the Chinese economy. But aren't those worrying signs if money is leaving, labor is leaving China?
I don't think that's a big issue because I just go on the story on the improving Chinese economy. I think one particular numbers I appreciate a lot is the private investment in China. I look at the statistics. The growth rate actually is pretty strong. If I remember correctly, it's 7.7%, which is far better than, I think, what is expected. And if you look at it year-to-year comparison, the increment in private investment is stronger than the fixed investment total. So that's a very, very strong sign.
So you're saying...
So to that end, I don't think it would be a concern for the Chinese capital to flow outside. Nonetheless, that's also a national strategy or corporate strategy, if you will. So I don't think it's a downside at all. I think it's a normal exchange.
Einar Tangen, we saw in the numbers there that disposable income per capita is going up. People essentially have a little bit more money to spend now. That is one of the government's aims. Is that a sense that you get on the ground there in Beijing?
Well, Beijing is very different from the rest of China. I think obviously here the expenditure is still going on. You see people with new cars, new almost everything, women in very snazzy outfits, still buying purses. There's no sense that anything is slowing down, except you're starting to see a little bit more growth that is more balanced. If you'll note, the numbers in terms of rural and urban divide, in terms of growth, income, and expenditure, have started to narrow. In fact, they're creeping back towards each other. So mid-priced restaurants, any establishment that is catering to a larger, more middle, lower class, affluent market, they are doing very, very well. And the super luxury is not doing as well.
The flip side of that, though, is that people who have more money to spend are going to invest it. They're going to put it into things like property. And that remains a problem. The figures there for the property market, we're seeing investments surge. Doesn't the government have to get a grip on this?
Absolutely. One of the things that we've been talking about for quite some time is this issue of investment grade opportunities. Right now, people flock to real estate because they're uncertain of the markets and they don't really have any other opportunities. This has been one of the factors that has been driving people to take their money out overseas. But I think this news shows that China is still one of the top markets to be in. You start contrasting with what is expected in the U.S., 0.9%, given that there are fluctuations that accommodate that. You start to realize that maybe taking your money out of China is not the best move, and that looking for real opportunities. As Owen pointed out, private investment indicates that there is opportunity here on this side of the ocean. And it's going to be one of those things that people are increasingly going to have to start looking at in a very, very unpredictable world. Do you want to go with China, very predictable, or do you want to go with Donald Trump, a little bit less predictable?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Donald Trump. Perry Wong, following President Xi Jinping's visit to China, his meetings with Donald Trump, we've heard Trump talk about the dollar strengthening. He wants to see it weaken a little bit. He thinks it's too strong. We're seeing the Chinese yuan appreciating. What kind of impact is that likely to have on economic growth as we go forward through the year?
I think that statement, it puts out a stance that the government, or at least President Trump, is comfortable with weaker dollar. I think that probably will play to the ears of the Chinese investors. That might actually help the Chinese government's effort in curbing the capital outflow in that sense. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. As to a stronger RMB, if the Chinese government continues its reform, the economy is supposed to be less reliant on export. So that's also not a bad thing either. So I will look at that as an upside.
That might mean more snazzy dresses, hopefully, for people in China. Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. Einar Tangen in Beijing and Perry Wong, many thanks indeed for talking to us.